multiple injuries and gone.
Speaking of gone, there it is.
What's that for a segue?
Welcome to the first prospect breakdown, chat. We're doing John Gil, my favorite Atlanta Braves prospect by far. I don't get excited about prospects much. I am very excited about this kid, and I think he's going to be our shortstop, hopefully for the next decade, and he might be here sooner than you think. So let's dive on into why I'm so excited. So as you can see here, we are comparing him to 2018 Ronald Acuna Jr. And right off the rip, you can kind of see the similarities between John and 2018 Ronald Acuna Jr. They're both kind of standing upright. You know, there's not a whole lot of knee bending. There's not a whole lot of any preset load. They're both just kind of up tall and being athletic. You can also look at their legs a little bit. Let's look at their feet. You can see right there down at the bottom, their front foot. They just got pressure on the toe. They don't have the whole front foot down, right? The back foot, if you look at it, they both have it really nicely dug in. They got the arch of the foot dug into the back dirt. And the reason why I like that is because it makes it easier for a hitter to internally rotate into that back hip. You can see the bats are pretty much parallel. They're both up and down. Obviously, Ronald's is a little bit more parallel than John's, but again, really, really close. And it's also not just the bat. If you look at their hands and how they got it away from their bodies, it's very, very similar. All right, here they are in their loaded position. As you can see, there's a little bit more of a difference here. John's a little bit more squatted. He's into his legs a little bit more. Ronald's a little bit taller. Again, nothing wrong with either one of them. But here's what I really like. They both anchor their back hip and back leg very well into the dirt. If you can see down there at their back foot, it's kind of inverted, which means the instep of their foot is really dug into the ground. That means they are really holding their momentum in their back hip very well. They are using that as an anchor as they stride forward. Now, you will see later on in this video that Ronald has a little bit of a different stride than John, but we'll get into that later. Let's get back to the similarities. Both of them, elite hip coil. They got really good internal rotation. They both only land on their front toe. They don't land on their entire front foot. The bats are pretty much in the exact same position. I would argue John loads into his scap a little bit more, and Ronald has a little bit more of a forward move with his body, so his hands just kind of stay in the same position, and his body moves away from his hands while he maintains a really good internal rotation in the hip, which is just an absolute freak show. That is ridiculous that Ronald can do that. All right, so now that we've talked about their stance and their loaded position, let's talk about the launch. How do they get the barrel in the zone effectively? Well, they use their hips. So as your hips begin to fire, they create a little bit of space for your shoulders to work and to fall into slot. So how do they do that? When your hips fire, that creates a domino effect up the chain. So when your hips fire, your core begins to turn. When your core is turning your body away from the position that it is in, and your hands are staying where they're at, that creates space in the back for your shoulder to externally rotate, which means that's where your barrel gets on plane. And as you can see right here with both John and Ronald, their hips fire, their core begins to turn. That creates the space in the back for their shoulders to externally rotate, which gets the barrel on the plane and allows their barrel to get into the zone properly and through the zone properly. So here's the one difference that I found between Ronald and John. It is the way they differ in their stride. So you'll notice during Ronald's stride, he has a good bit of head movement, right? And normally for a lot of hitters, that's a bad thing. It wasn't a bad thing for Ronald in 2018. Ronald was able to keep his hip internal rotation, his hip coil in that back leg while completely having a positive move forward to the pitcher. And it didn't affect his ability to hit a baseball at all. That is freakish level stuff. That is why Ronald Acuna Jr. is Ronald Acuna Jr. So you'll notice with John that he is the complete opposite. He really focuses on keeping his back leg anchored, keeping his head still, and really only using his front leg to stride forward while keeping his body back and his head still. That gives him the best opportunity to read the pitch and make the best contact possible. But that was the only difference I really found between the two of them, was Ronald's stride, and Ronald's a little bit taller, but they both use their hips at an elite level. They both use their hips to create separation, to allow their shoulders to get in the slot, to allow their barrel to get on plane early, and that allows the bat to get into the zone at a good time and gives you the best possible window for solid contact. And with all that being said, that is why this kid is by far my favorite prospect in the Brave system. He reminds me a lot of a young Ronald Acuna Jr., and there's a reason why that he's still in big league camp, chat. He has impressed a lot of Braves upper management and coaching in this spring training. So be on the lookout for this kid to maybe break big league camp for the first 30 to 50 games if he continues this good stretch.